I don't believe in reincarnation, but I've had a very vivid dream well over 300 times, and it's always the same, every time. The rational part of me says that it's something that I dreamt up 15 years ago, and for whatever odd reason, my mind keeps recalling it, but the details never change. Not that it's worth anything online, but I'm a 31-year-old Australian. I have a couple of degrees, law and commerce, and am a managing consultant looking over approximately 1,700 people in my division. The Australian part is important. We have a zero-gun and paramilitary culture. I sometimes see Americans wearing camo pants to the shops on your TV shows, which I think is weird. Which is another reason I can't process my dream. It's straight out of an action movie, so far removed from my normal life. I'm a passenger in a helicopter, flying over a town that appears Middle Eastern, desert-colored. But it's really big. The buildings aren't modern. They're 2, maybe 5 stories at most. I'm a passenger in the back facing forward. I can see my friend sitting facing me, fully in army gear. We have just completed a mission and the radio goes. This is a little weird. I don't think the message is in English, but I understand it. All the same. I'm certain I look Caucasian. I don't really hear what they say in my dream, but the guy in front of me talks to me on my own headset. He basically gives me the instruction that we're going in again to support another group of troops already on the ground. The helicopter swings about. The dream flashes forward. Then it's me, about to jump out, oddly with a rope in my hands. I'm not talking about climbing gear, but actual thick rope, the kind you would use to dock a boat. We're not super far from the ground, but we use it like a fireman's pole. The ground troops are in a formation, against the side of a large house. I know that I've seen this before in movies like American Sniper. They're in a line, ready to go, one in after the other. The team knock on the door, and I'm second or third in. In the point of view style, my gun is up. People are on the ground floor, fire back, but this all happens in another room, and they are quickly dispatched. I go upstairs to the first floor, that is located near the door. There's a man in the first room doorway that I shoot, and he's down. Quickly moving through that room into the next one, I miss a boy to my left. Young, like 15. Who has a handheld machine gun. He shoots me, then gets shot down by people behind me. In the dream, I'm semi-kneeling. I put my hands to my chest and I have my own blood on my fingertips. I get first aid assistance, but I've probably got 4 or 5 bullets in me. I've always remembered the wall behind me, cracked, a little like they've gone through. I tilt forward a bit. The blood oozes into a pool on the floor, then black. For a split second, I'm in a hospital bed, somewhere with bright lights, people milling around. Then, nothing. I don't know for certain if I've had any past lives, but I'm very intuitive and somewhat clairvoyant. I used to own a past life meditation CD that would help the listener tune in to any past lives they may have had. One time, I became aware of living a very lonely life. I was a pretty blonde woman who was married and lived in a fairly big house. It appeared to be an idyllic life, but I was extremely sad and lonely. I couldn't bear children and my husband was very distant. I had no one to talk to, and no one to engage with. I sat alone in my house a lot and stared at myself in the mirror. My name is Sarah, and what's interesting about that name is when I was around 3 years old, in this lifetime, my aunt had recently adopted a cat and she asked me what she should name her. I immediately said Sarah, and that became her name. Another time, I was at a library, and the librarian was making name tags for all the kids. I was maybe a year or 2 older. I told her, Sarah, and in that moment I truly believed that was my name. It was like I was in a trance state. My mom heard what I said and corrected me. That broke me out of my trance, but I'll never forget how right it felt. Anyway, in that lifetime, I contemplated suicide a number of times, but was very scared of actually going through with it. But after 15 years of sorrow, I finally gave in. I took a bunch of pills and fell asleep. I remember falling into a deep sleep and leaving my body behind. Some people believe that there's a special place in hell for those who have taken their own life. I know through meditation and clairvoyance that, in my case, I drifted around aimlessly for a year before being put into a new human life. This is my current lifetime. Much of the karma I have experienced in this life is due to that lifetime. I grew up with a family who was very emotionally distant. Thus, I have often felt lonely and sad. It has been a lifelong struggle so far to feel connected and joyful. Another past life I'm aware of living is during the time of extreme fear of witches in the US. I was a woman who wear long dresses and bonnets. I lived in a sturdy-looking house with my father. I lived a simple life. I spent much of my time doing chores and caring for my father. I enjoyed it, though. And I didn't spend much time daydreaming or wishing for more. One day I was hanging clothes up on a clothesline outside when a man snuck up behind me. He was dirty and reeked of alcohol. I heard him behind me when he was only a few feet away. I didn't have time to think. I could only react. He was reaching his arms out to grab me. I turned very quickly and picked up a sharp tool nearby. I turned back around and plunged it into his chest. He He fell to his knees and looked surprised as the life drained out of him. He landed face first onto the ground, and that's when I started breathing and thinking again. I freaked out and ran inside my house. My father wasn't home at the time, so I went to my room and I cried on my bed. I didn't know what to do. I was very scared. I knew what I did was wrong, and I would be severely punished for it. It didn't matter that I was in self-defense. I was a woman, and that didn't matter much in those days. I thought about burying his body, but I knew there was no use. Someone would discover the freshly dug up plot of earth and ask questions. I wasn't adept at all at lying, so I knew that wouldn't work. My father was very worried for me when he found out what had happened, but there wasn't anything he could do. He had little power in the community. They came for me 2 days later. They put me in their buggy and took me somewhere without a word. I was extremely scared and kept hyperventilating. They shoved me around and I fell a few times. They stuck me in a dark room in a basement of a building. I was in a cell in there with no bed, no running water, and very little light. The level of fear I experienced could not adequately be put into words. I just knew that something very bad was about to happen, and there was nothing I could do about it. I spent much of that time curled up into a ball, trying to block out everything. Occasionally, a man would show up and throw a piece of bread between the bars, and leave without a word. I think I spent 5 days in there, maybe a week. They came for me and placed a burlap sack over my head. I was pushed and shoved outside. I knew it was a beautiful sunny morning. I could feel it through the sack and on the skin of my arms. They had me step up onto something, and then a heavy scratchy object was placed around my neck. I knew then that it was a rope, and I would be hanged. I tried to be at peace, but all I could do was scream inside of my head and hyperventilate. A man spoke a few dark, heavy words. I wasn't really listening. A few moments later, I was swinging back and forth in the air, and I was in gut-wrenching pain. I couldn't breathe, and my neck felt like it was on fire. I kept pulling at the rope, desperately trying to get air, but I couldn't. My mouth hung open, my tongue out, and my eyes open as far as they could go. I choked and couldn't breathe. Finally, the light went out of me. That's the best way I can describe it. I had a light inside of my body, and it slowly went out like a candle flame. When the light was gone, so was I. I was no longer in my body. I floated up away from it, up and up and up, until I couldn't see the scene beneath me anymore. Then everything was all white and very bright. I felt at peace, but I wanted to live again. There was a melancholy within me, due to not having fulfilled my life's work. It ended too soon.